morning, everyone. Today, I'd like to describe how some public transport operators are dealing with COVID-19 and the measures they're deploying to get passengers back on public transport. In addition to all the problems that COVID-19 has created to our everyday life, it has also contributed to reduce people's reliance on public transport, despite the fact that several studies have shown no direct correlation between public transport use and COVID-19 spread. But what have we learned so far? Even after the release or partial release of lockdown measures deployed all over the world by national governments, we've noticed a significant decline in the use of public transportation, which has unfortunately not really picked up anyway close to pre-COVID times. The past 9 to 10 months have determined an increased focus on safety, on cleanliness, and on distance. We've also seen that information and user engagement are key to re-establish trust and public acceptance. Public transport operators everywhere are called to deploy measures to get back passengers' confidence in public transport. Measures which, in addition to, for instance, sterilization and ventilation, rely on public information and user engagement, for instance, using their own journey planning and mobile ticketing apps. I'd like to show you some examples of these measures, but first let me introduce myself. I am with Siemens Mobility, within our group of companies, which puts together over 700 people that work exclusively on developing and deploying smart software solutions for intermodal mobility. We have the German-based company Hakon, which is one of the leading providers of trip planning algorithms and applications for rail and public transport operators. We also have the German-based EOS Uptrade, which supplies mobile ticketing solution to a large number of public transport operators across Europe. And we have the New York-based TheMarker, a PCI certified provider of mobile ticketing and mobile payment solutions. Just to give you an idea of our experience, so far we have deployed more than 100 apps in over 25 countries. We have more than 230 million downloads. Our backend systems are basis for over 100 trip planning applications and sell over 120,000 digital tickets every day. And during the course of our projects, we have integrated in one form or another over 80 mobility providers that cover all modes of transport. All these apps which we've developed are white labeled. That is, we develop them according to the needs and brands of our customers, the public transport operators or the rail operators, who own and manage them and do not have to rely on third-party apps such as Google. Our objective is essentially to cover all relevant areas of the user experience while traveling using public transportation and the various alternative transport modes. Starting from gathering the necessary information and planning the trip, going on to book and paying for the required services, up until providing various information and management services during and after the trip. So let me show you a range of measures that are being taken by several operators to help regain people's trust in public transport. All of these measures are possible if public transport operators have their own app, instead of relying on apps developed by third-party operators, third-party companies. Which is why we encourage PTOs and PTAs, public transport operators and agencies, to have their own app, their own trip planning app, or mobile ticketing. These measures are, for instance, occupancy assessment, which means methods to estimate how many passengers are in a train or a bus or at a station. Various methods for analysis and prediction. A COVID-19 adjusted journey planning, which I'll describe in a second, as well as contactless ticketing, disruption information, and demand responsive transport services. I would like to focus on three particular ones. These are occupancy assessment, COVID-19 adjusted journey planning, and disruption information. As I said, occupancy assessment is essentially the estimation of how crowded an approaching bus is, or for instance, how many people are expected to travel on a train at a specific time. And this, whether direct measurement or estimation, is key for supporting adherence to requirements for safety, distance, and for properly managing demand and capacity. Now, conventional technologies to count passengers, whether infrared counters, video cameras, or weighing techniques, tend to be expensive generally, as they require hardware installation and maintenance, and therefore are not always available, especially for smaller operators. And here I'd like to show two alternatives to conventional technologies, which are exclusively based on software. The first methodology on the left is essentially the estimation of vehicle occupancy based on big data analytics. Essentially, information from the trip planning app, such as user trip requests and other data, is used to infer occupancy level. This is done, for instance, by our customers in Berlin and Frankfurt. A second different method for estimating occupancy captures the Bluetooth signals sent by travelers' devices in a specific wagon, whether smartphones, headsets, smartwear, or similar. And after various calibration methods, they provide an assessment of the number of passengers which are present in a given vehicle. Data showing how crowded a metro line is expected to be, or for instance, which train carriage are less full, can then be used as input for trip planning. And in fact, another measure that helps passengers be safe is the provision of journey planning suggestions, which are optimized so as to reduce travelers' exposure to other people. Thus, the journey planning algorithm can be optimized to select routes that avoid crowded lines, for instance, and that include potentially longer but safer transfers. Here you see some examples from some apps, including the one in Frankfurt. Lastly, the app can be used to generate banners or pop-ups and other means of both direct and interactive communication with travelers. This communication can also be built for specific target segments, and different messages can be generated for different customer groups. Some agencies, such as the National Rail Operator in Luxembourg, TfL, and also some regional rail operators in Germany, have started using these techniques for better reaching out to passengers. And here you see some of their apps. And this brings me to my last slide. To summarize what I'd like you to remember, several measures can help to regain people's trust in public transport. Information and passenger engagement are key, and your own app for trip planning and mobile ticketing help operators put measures in place for occupancy assessment, COVID-19 adjusted journey planning, disruption information, and several more. With that, I'd like to conclude. If there are any questions, you can reach me via LinkedIn. You can see my Twitter or simply by email or telephone. Thank you very much.